faculty member who had a request wanting to be able to see data of various assignments in mastery because they've done the same assignment or the same learning outcome. They've assessed it at various stages throughout the semester. They wanted to see, was there a difference? With this tool, we're capturing data not just at a college level, we're getting it at a academic org level, within Canvas, a sub-account level, prefix level, course level, and even down to an assignment level. So if, and this is a hint for faculty members, if you're going to be doing things like a pre and post test, or even if you're doing summative assignments, building on concepts, I really like what this individual did is they put in some kind of sequential numbering, knowing when an assignment or quiz was offered. With this, they could see throughout the semester what was going on. The ability to doing it also across terms for academic years. In this case, it was just within one term. So I just wanted to give you all a chance to see this. This is a great example of how we're using summative or formative assessment. Are we doing it a lot? No. Should we? Yes. We want to start using this more frequently, and it's a really powerful set of data. Now, the next segment, I'm going to do some talking, and then I'm going to ask Jake and Najma to chime in because they're the experts on this. I want to talk about Canvas setup matters. And I thought that was a really cute title because it matters about Canvas setup, and it does matter in terms of this tool. And the key thing is thinking about the need for data. Got to have student learning outcomes at an institutional program and course level. And it's going to require grading of assignments and quizzes to collect the data, period. It's going to require a way of joining rubrics to assignments to learning outcomes. And it's going to require a method of loading learning outcomes and rubrics. And it requires a method of loading classes from SIS into a learning management system. And this requires Canvas. Are there other tools out there? MyMathLab, et cetera? Yes. But 85% of our courses roughly are taught using Canvas. So that is the tool of choice. That is why we went down the rabbit hole that we chose. Now, with Canvas, we learned a lot about how to administer it to make it work for us. Example, we went through some learning about how to set up courses that did not come directly from SIS. The vast majority of our courses are imported from SIS into Canvas, and it's really easy, really slick. That's the way you want to go. But there are going to be cases like CTL workshops, etc., where they're not built into SIS. We had to come up with a way to be able to get that data to work for us. We had to load learning outcomes into Canvas. We had to support faculty and staff using Canvas to capture learning outcomes data. And the keys start with loading of classes. And Najma, if you want to jump in, please. I want to talk a little bit about automatically loading Canvas classes. Anything?
I would say from our experience, it took some trial and error because, of course, we could load outcomes into Canvas, but the issue that we came across in 2018, 2019 was trying to figure out a way that our faculty wouldn't be inundated with all outcomes. That was a problem. So we wanted to be able to load them in a manner that was fitting for their division. So one thing we figured out was how to specifically, and we work with our SAC coordinators to specifically come up with outcomes, working with our faculty, of course, and placing them in their own specific divisional folders. So that way, me being a business and instructional computing adjunct, I would only see those outcomes that fit my division. And I don't have to worry about scrolling through tons of outcomes and just becoming extremely overwhelmed by seeing that. So that was an important thing that we discovered. And then how we named them too. That's something that Jim can speak more about. But naming them is also key.
Absolutely.
So, so yeah, we'll do some of that.
Outcomes that you have in your division, are those the official Maricopa program learning outcomes from CCTA?
So that's great. You want to take that?
I'm gonna give you a consultant's answer. It depends.
I was gonna say
That'll be
yes,
$500.
yes and no, right? Yeah.
There are instances where that is the case, there are instances where it's not. We'll talk about that.
Yes.
With but not, you call it the division,
Yes.
I call that more like the discipline.
Same, yeah.
Canvas organizes stuff in a really weird way. And the reports you can get out of Canvas are deceptive. If you are in your sub account, let's say economics, you're only going to see stuff for economics. Data, however, is stored. This was a really fun lesson. I'm being sarcastic if you can't see me. Maricopa has one license. We have 10 or 9 actually sub licenses. So that I'm not swimming in Gateway's data. I'm not swimming in Glendale's data. But because we have one license, they store everything together. Make perfect sense? Now let me paint a scenario. We have one license and everything's stored together like learning outcomes. And there's a great learning outcome we had as a result of the Guided Pathways project. Call the J. Oh, I love that. I'm going to use that. If I want to use it at Australia, the name of that one has already been used. I have to rename it, which creates a real train wreck of reality. I figured out some ways to work around it, but it's a little bit of a pain in the neck. That's the part of the learning curve that took a long time.
Also add to the question you mentioned if the outcomes were official, CCT, something.
Yeah.
I think that also depends too on how it's loaded. So for our campus, I'm not jumping the gun, but we have our SAC committee that we work with. Their role is they help facilitate getting those official outcomes, right? So that's how we import them, but it doesn't stop a person who uses Canvas to still be able to go in and create outcomes on their own too. So.
Some of the ones developed on instructional councils, people love. And then there are others. We have given our faculty, because it is a faculty-driven process, prerogative of writing their own if they don't agree with maybe the verbiage or the direction, or they think something was missed. So we give our college brethren that opportunity and that flexibility. Now, we recognize some needs to do some custom work for courses that are loaded into Canvas manually. Najma has been a great resource about learning how to and how not to on that as well. Now, we've learned that, let's say for CCTA sources, the Guided Pathways Mapping Project, when we were just starting in program learning outcomes, folks struggled with how do I measure a program? How do I get about that? With the result, this was my favorite output from the entire initiative, was the learning outcomes that were developed by instructional councils for roughly 100 programs across the district. We were able to bring those into Australia. There are also course learning outcomes. And if you don't know where to start, I go back to the Wizard of Oz model. If you don't know where to start at the beginning, follow the road. In this case, start quite often and taking a look at what has already been developed. And there are quite often times when either they don't meet the needs, they don't exist, then we develop them manually. More need for data? Develop and load assignments where we can assess the learning outcomes, build rubrics around them, using those learning outcomes, and grading the assignments or quizzes. A key element to making this successful for you is to turn on the learning outcome mastery grade. If that is not enabled, it's not going to capture the data. So particularly if you're working with course masters, make sure that that is activated by default. And that is a part of that social systems thing. If some folks don't want to turn that on for whatever reason. So explaining why that's essential is a really key point for success.
So if a faculty member doesn't, within their unique Canvas course, have their learning mastery grade button turned on, I mean, I think.
They can turn it off, but we've shifted from the default of it not being on to being.
But that doesn't have anything to do with pulling the data. The data is still pulled whether I, the faculty member, make it seeable in my course or not.
For your course, absolutely. For my stuff, if it's not hooked through the Learning Master Gradebook, it won't work. It will not show up.
So if my Psych 101 course, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that I'm teaching, right now, doesn't have Learning Mastery Gradebook on, you're saying the data won't pull into your dashboard?
Because it doesn't know how to hook it all together.
I don't think we've run into that. Anyway,
I'm happy for you.
but that's, anyway, that,
There's been great gnashing of teeth and rending of garments, frustration with that, as we recognize.
okay, anyway, we can maybe explore that.
Yeah.
That's.
And that's not my area of expertise, but that is my understanding.
Okay.
So are you currently pulling data into Tableau?
Yeah. Here, just to see that.
Okay, so.
We'll talk amongst us.
Well, yeah, offline,
Yeah.
lunchtime.
But us.
But yes, I think it's.
Take a look at the handouts that you have. Second page, where it talks about block 2. It's important, and this should be a quick conversation. Just ask yourself, who in your campus is loading classes not imported from SIS? Identify name, because this is going to be kind of your roadmap.
I have a, like I have a need by loading classes not on board from SIS, like the Psych Club has a Canvas course.
So like, yes, like clubs, boards, trainings, things like that.
Okay.
But not SIS generated,
Okay.
non-credit type.
Got it.
So think about who on your campus does this. Who loads student learning outcomes into Canvas? Is it CTL? Faculty? Nobody?
Jim, do you happen to have a original copy of this for online participants?
If not, Jim, maybe Najma or Jake can scan it and send it to me and I will put it in the chat.
That would be way too easy.
Okay, we gonna do that. And you don't have to.
It's okay. For the time it takes me to get all the things.
That's okay.
Place.
Can you see it?
Now we'll scan this and send it out through the chat. Identify your players now so that you've got that part of the conversation already laid out. Who would make something?
Jeffrey Anderson, our CTL or campus admin, typically handles a lot of that stuff.
Now, if you can, load your classes from SIS. Vast majority of what you're doing, that's probably going to be how you're going to do it. If you got to do it manually, here's what you need to do. When you add a new course, and I'm going to use Najma's example, you want to create it with the exact same format that you're already using. Naming matters. Words matter. The course name, reference code, the sub-account, and the enrollment term. In this example, for Najma's class, For the name, EMC 2024 Fall, Optimizing Canvas for Student Success. The name matters. When it comes in from SIS, it's already populated. The reason it matters, I'll get to in a second. Please put in a sub account. We talked a little bit about separating out the data by division or sub accounts. That's where that goes in. Makes it much easier to work with. And term, if you don't choose one, it's going to come up with something called default term. And you're going to have to manually code it to tell Canvas when that course occurred. Using these terms gives you a much better ability to do some longitudinal work with the data. So just following this lead is extremely helpful. Now, something that doesn't quite work the way I hoped was outcoming groups. In this case, let's say a program or course is using institutional learning outcomes, program, and course level. With those different levels, with groups, you do have the ability to potentially segregate them out so you can see the outcomes, but they're clustered together. So I don't have 40 learning outcomes. I can see I have 5 institutional, 17 program within my division. So let's say it's an IT division. It's complex. And then these are the CLOs at a course level. Gives you a more logical way to break it out and potentially a better way of reporting. Here's some things I wish it did that for our data doesn't work because we've already done so much data. We started from scratch. I think it could have really made things a heck of a lot easier. Lessons learned. If you're going to add a group, click on plus group. Add a non-formatted group description. Formatting really matters. And in a word, don't. No one's really going to look this backside of Canvas. But I see a whole lot of people saying, well, I can put it in bold and italics and all kinds of stuff. It's pretty. Let's get a look at it here. And the reality is Canvas sends the data over into Tableau, and it carries over all of this formatting. Or if you copied it, you made it beautiful in Word, you copy it, you paste it in, it's going to convey all what they call the HTML tags. And so I've got this monstrosity of a bunch of things in brackets I have to clean up behind the scenes. Instead, CTL, I implore you, use a text editor, copy it and paste it from the text editor. You'll make everyone's life much easier.
I use Notepad when I do it. We ran into this exact issue. Notepad, and it has to be a basic text editor because even something like Google spreadsheets or like Google Docs or, Excel, that all has data that you don't see, but is copied when you hit Control-C, copy. And I didn't know this until we started trying to put it in and it started showing up in the dashboard.
This was another one of those incredibly painful, frustrating things. And I had to relearn how to do all kinds of cool stuff to wipe out regetics, edit, and all that kind of stuff.
So at EMCC, is it the CTL that primarily does all of this setting up of the course?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the instructors access like a centralized bank of base.
Course masters.
Yeah, there those division folders that we talked about earlier. Or discipline folders. So either the course masters or through those division folders that we talked about earlier, they can access.
Was that like course master, like lead instructor or?
So our course master is, it's like a template. So let's say so if I'm an adjunct teaching CIS 105 and I don't want to start from scratch, then we have course masters that I can just import in and So and if it already has its outcome set up, then it just brings it off.
Like a sandbox, maybe like a
Um,
canvas sandbox.
So for us, the way we use sandboxes is really just for that, just to play, right? Explore different tools or what have you. But our course master is actually loaded with that content for that course. That as an adjunct or even other residential faculty, I can import it and I don't have to start from scratch. I can just teach what's already there.
Let me give you a hint. If it's built into the master and an instructor takes the master into their own section, et cetera, once it's set up, they teach the course, it went great, they got some data. Next semester, I could roll over that class. All of this conveys. You don't have to reset it out. So once it's built in, you're good, which is a really nice functionality. The other element that I think is really, we had good fortune that we did this not even thinking about it, is that when new courses are developed or updated, we have a process for that, compensation involved, et cetera. Part of the satisfying getting paid for rewriting that course is to embed within it program and course or course learning outcomes. So we're forcing the issue of you want to get paid, you're going to have some PLOs or CLOs. That's a great way to drive behavior because that, money is a great thing. And the absence of it is even better. So that is a nice kind of social system that we have built in to our model that works really well. Now, in terms of importing out learning outcomes, and this kind of gets to the example that I used about.
Jim, so sorry,
Yes.
there is a question in the chat. Tom Smith is asking who in the CTL is providing this support?
Jake and myself.
Jake and Najma. Najma puts the courses in and Jake handles the learning outcomes.
And maybe let's tell their roles as well.
Sorry. I guess I didn't introduce myself. Hi, my name is Najma Mohammed. I'm the instructional designer here at the CTL and I'm working with Jim and Becky Baradowski. I think you've mentioned her already. Like in the infancy stages of putting this together. So we had a lot of trial and error and a lot of just wanting to throw the computer across the floor and all that. So we came up with the process and now for me, I'm more so help with the course masters and developing that, working with Dr. Cantu and our fractal co-chair as far as getting that part together and working with Zach. So I'm more so with the course masters. Once we develop the outcomes project, I've actually kind of turned it over to our awesome Jake Cunningham. I'll let him introduce himself. He does we're the worker bees, but he's more the being. He's the bee that's being at this point. So I still help out and help provide support and ideas, but Jake is the one that's taken our requests from our SAC coordinators. They submit a request to us for them to be official outcomes so that Jim can do his magic to get the data he needs. It's a process. It goes through our SAC coordinators, who then submit a request for outcomes to be official. Then it goes to the CTL and Jake is the one that makes that magic happen. So.
Yeah, as she said, I'm Jake Cunningham. What I do is I basically so once it's all official, SAC goes through their approval process or whatever magic they do. They submit, we have it set up where it's a Google form that automatically populates into a spreadsheet. So they fill out the form and then I take what's in the spreadsheet. I format it in a plain text editor to get rid of all the HTML. And then from there, I enter it into Canvas by making a group, and then I make sure everything sticks with the same naming conventions, so it can easily populate. Jim doesn't have to rename stuff or make it make sense.
On that Google form that they submit, they submitting the program learning outcome, the rubric, like all of that language to you, and that's what you're formatting, and what's in that Google form?
Basically, what it has is it has the course it's for.
We can show you those two. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's got the course, it's got the outcomes like shorthand, like a quick little name that we put in, and then it's got the description of the outcome.
The rubric we leave to the instructor. It's, you know, they're the experts. They're the, you know, they're the,
They can have their own separate garden.
absolutely, they own it. I mean, that's their material, that's their content.
Okay.
And that's their pride and joy. Don't want to deny it.
So course outcomes and then just the description.
Yeah, basically.
We lost knowledge. The next element, I want to just speak briefly about, and I mentioned it. And Glendale has done some really cool stuff with this as well. This is important, big blocks of learning outcomes.
Not Glendale, Chandler Gilbert, I think, has done this.
Well, they've done this and we've done this, but Glendale has done this in a different factor.
Oh, yeah.
We saw this great work done by the Guided Pathways Project. We wanted to steal shamelessly and bring in those program and course learning outcomes that were a product of that. This is a political suggestion. As a district, it makes to me a lot more sense is if we could set it up in a better way. Right now, as district learning outcomes are developed and updated in CCTA's data set, there's no connection to what I bring to my college and what CCTA has done. If something is updated, I have no way of knowing. If something is updated, there's no real timestamp. I would suggest a better solution is having maybe once a term, having a data dump from CCTA to get that updated and available for colleges.
If you want to show it, I sent it to you in Messenger.
Once you,
I already added it to the chat.
thanks, Liz.
Okay, but to show people in the room, did you want to show them?
Should be able to open the link
Just
just by
open the
clicking
link.
through the chat.
Yeah, if they wanted to see what the it's like. I thought I was seeing
You have too many mices.
Yeah. And then just click on the link. How's it?
We'll show this later.
Yeah. Murphy's Law.
Glendale, the example was coming up was, what was the example that Cindy, you've been working with?
Jackie.
Um,
I'm so sorry, keep it really.
You reminded me of my sister, so,
Oh, sorry, the example of what?
with the name, Stacy, for-
Oh, the NACI.
Oh,
Sorry, one. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here like, what do you, yes, I'm sorry. So I usually don't. So the NACI goes through their accreditation, you know, certain times of the year. And so instead of pulling a Google sheet, you know, after downloading the data, they were wondering if we could put it in a dashboard because it all pulls from Canvas. So I was able to do that, you know, I mean, honestly, Jim's coding and stuff like that helped us a million times. So then I was able to just match it to what they need. So any kind of accreditation information that's there, whether they, you know, meet, exceed, that kind of stuff. So that's there and that's it.
And just in case anyone, so NACI is the accreditor for early childhood. And so there are district outcomes that are local.
And so importing them as a block is a heck of a lot easier than spending like 5 days manually keeping. Theoretically, it's like, you know, some of the nursing accreditations have potentially could use this. Don't know. A lot of possibilities, and this is unexplored territory of making it easier and more approachable.
Now, I think the only thing, yeah, so the NACI outcomes though were already in the district Canvas account. So,
But in the Estrella realm, we didn't see those.
Okay, I see. So
And so I had to import
got it.
the guided pathways work into our instance within the medical license. It's confusing, I know that. Where data is stored in one table, but I can only see a little bit of it. That's how Canvas works. And this is why I love the analogy of the rabbit hole. Chasing after things that you don't know where they've gone and what the heck they do.
I can also add that it just emphasizes the importance of team, right? Like there's things that Jim knows about Canvas that we don't have access to, you know what I mean? And vice versa. So it definitely takes a team to be able to cover those components. And faculty is super, super key. So we work a lot with our SAC just to have that cohesiveness.
A quick hint on that, if you're an IR person and you're gonna be working with us, buddy up with your Canvas administrator. See if you can get Canvas administrative rights. Because you can look underneath the hood and understand and troubleshoot a heck of a lot easier if you have that access. I was very fortunate working with folks who are very trusting, crazy fools that they are, that I.
And it ain't easy, I'll tell you. We worked with district and got him the full access, the same access that I have.
The only thing I do it, 2 reports. But those 2 reports make my life a heck of a lot easier.
You got access to the data lake.
If you want to import, it sounds really easy. Prepare your file, and they have some hints on how to make it work for you. You can barely read on the very bottom right. There's a sample file that has not very much data. You click on outcomes, import, upload your file, view the import status. Good chance it's going to be rejected. Rejection's tough. Suck it up, deal with it, and then go through and try to figure out why it failed. For us, it took me about a week to figure out that another one of our brethren colleges had gone in and used about 3 of the 1,000 course learning outcome names. So I had to customize all of them for it to accept any of the list because there was one usage violation out of 1,000. Yay! That's how it is.
Jim, I have another question. I know that in the Maricopa Assessment Committee, we've been talking, about some of these district-wide / local college challenges. And I want to say Jeremy Tutty over at Chandler was trying to find ways to import everything from CCTA. Have you had any conversations?
No, I've had enough battles that I haven't gone down that route. However, my recommendation from an IR person is having what's the term data dump of all the learning outcomes at whatever level and whatever cluster, so that colleges can import it just this way.
Right, yeah, because theoretically, if the district put it all in and updated it, the colleges could grab it, right?
Yes. So,
I think my only concern, we talked about that in one of our meetings, is from a organizational, well, at least for us worker bees, it's just organizing that data. And it might be worth it in the beginning, you know what I mean? Work hard, working in the beginning, and then it makes it easier along the way. But that would just be the only way, would it be a simple enough process to organize it for our instructors so that they don't get inundated with all that information? And then
Right.
that'd be another reason why they're not wanting to assess because of that extra barrier. So if it's a way that, and I'm not saying we shouldn't explore that, but that's just something we would need to think about. How can we organize it so that our faculty and our instructors.
Because it might pull in where
Exactly.
it's not in the nice little buckets for each
Right.
discipline.
And it could be a way, it could be something that we could figure out on our end, to just be something.
and to that end, this came up last week in a conversation with our BPAA. We discussed back in 2018 the possibility of bringing down at each of those disciplines, those sub-accounts, only the ones pertinent to them. And we got a lot of resistance. People didn't want to have to scroll through a lot of stuff that they weren't going to use. So instead of dealing with that, we just kind of as needed pull it down. That does make more sense, particularly now when we don't have all that many, not all of our courses are pulling in learning outcomes. Just making it more manageable and choosing the battles that we can win and fight. Now, when creating manually learning outcomes, and this is part of Jake's expertise, this is what it looks like in Canvas for you IR people. Any wild guess what you click on to add an outcome? What outcome? In the name box, I'm going to get real preachy here. Naming matters. You can name it whatever you want, but if you want it to work within this system, you're going to follow the lead. Building into the name, if it is an ILO, starting it off with ILO colon. Any guesses for PLO? CLO. Using that structure through the nerddom that I have. The way this thing works up in Tableau Prep is it takes a look at the thousands of learning outcomes and it says, if it starts with an ILO, it's an ILO. And I've categorized. Why does that matter? I want to filter so I only look at the ILOs on this dashboard. Or I only want to look at PLOs. But I gotta have a way of knowing what's what. Coding in the short description, that name is the easiest way to do it. Highly, highly recommend that business practice. Was that preaching? Make the systems work for you.
The specific naming protocol I use is like CLO colon course prefix. So like ABC 1, 2, 3. Dash CLO and then the CLO numbers. CLO. So the whole thing would be like CLO colon ABC 1, 2, 3 dash CLO 1. And it would be identical except that for the next one, except that it would say CLO 2.
And what colleges do we have represented today? Glendale, Mesa.
I mean, anyway.
Does somebody from each college have a list of what I've developed? I'm not going to send these online because I want to be respectful of privacy and confidentiality.
Oh, and PB too.
I was gonna say Paradise Valley is online as well.
What I've done is I've generated a list of the short learning outcome names that you already have data for with at least 5 assignments or quizzes graded. Just to give you an idea of how much data is already in there. The good news is, for most of y'all, you've already got to start. The bad news is, if you want to follow this model, you might have to do some coding to make these work. And if the short description is War and Peace, like some of the ones on this, you're going to have fun. Lessons learned. We didn't know that either. We learned to do things a little bit.
Jen, there is a question online. It is, if the outcome names are not consistent and oftentimes without specifically mentioning ILO, PLO, CLO, is there still another way in the system to identify what type of learning outcome it is?
Absolutely. And the first step is to buy a really good lunch for your IR staff, which I highly recommend regardless. NCTL, yeah, let's go for it. You can hard code it in the system. Using this model makes it so you don't have to hard code it once you start following this model. You guys have to. It's not difficult, just. And it takes a lot of practice. Great question. In the description, I don't like including in my dashboards what this outcome means, because in Jake's example, he's done fantastic of naming it ILO colon blah, 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 blah. That means nothing to anybody except for us. So you want to give it a good, short description, but don't, yeah, you're going to see that bold button. You're going to want to use that bold button. Don't use the bold and italics buttons. Keep it simple, plain text.
And also, the friendly name is there, so if the protocol name is kind of gobbledygook and not very understandable to teachers, if put in something for the friendly name, it'll be easier for them to figure out which one it is without reading the full description.
Yes. Make the stuff work for you.
But if I'm correct, the friendly name doesn't show up on the dashboard.
It does not show up on the dashboard. Couple of other important things. When you're manually creating a learning outcome, please chime in as you fit. You have the opportunity to put in descriptions and point values. Please put in descriptions. However, don't write out long, verbose. Don't write Tolstoy, write haiku. Make it really short. Exceeds expectations, meets expectations, short of expectations, didn't have a clue. I don't care what you're saying, just keep it short and sweet. Because once again, we've got some new tables that are getting added, to be able to include this. So we'll have options beyond just mastery. But if we keep it short and sweet, it's a heck of a lot easier to work with. Another essential element is mastery at. This, when the person is putting in this learning outcome, and for us with the faculty loading their learning outcomes, they're the ones, as a faculty-driven process, they're the ones who declare this is the point total where mastery begins. If it's a 4-point scale and I get a 3 or higher, I've mastered the concept. Think of it this way. Mastery, give it a 1. Not mastery, give it a 0. How do I calculate mastery? Add up all the numbers divided by the count. It makes it universal regardless of if you have 3 or 20 points on the scale. And please save. Otherwise, bad things happen. Finally, and really important, is enable the Learning Mastery Gradebook. Our experience at Estrella is if it is not turned on, it's not going to show up in the data. I hope there's another way of getting around that. We have not experienced that. I'm not standing up here to tell a CTL how to do what they do. That I'm not that vain, and I don't know. I don't understand a lot of the Canvas stuff. However, this is a years of experience learning how to make it work with what we're trying to do. So consider it as a possibility. One last thing, grading. Once it's set up with the rubrics, etc., you grade. An interesting problem occurred, however, for folks who are using the automatic speed grader, where it's a multiple choice assignment or quiz, go into Canvas, the data doesn't show up. Think about it. If it's automatically getting graded, they got it right, got it wrong, etc. If it doesn't have a rubric associated with that automatic grading, it's not going to know, did they get that learning outcome mastery? So this is a challenge, and a reality is for your faculty who are loading, if you're going to use the automatic grading, you still need to have an associated rubric so that the software knows, did they master it or not?
Also, and I do believe in new quizzes. I think you can. That's just, I'm terrible with new quizzes. We still have to explore. So that might be a possibility using the new quizzes feature. And to Jim's point, with the auto graded, it's challenging, but there are some faculty that have done some workarounds to it to still get those assessments, but it's not, it's clean. And we have to.
One thing we've noticed, if faculty associate outcomes with like quizzes, is that we know what a 0, 1, 2, or 3, 4 means, but Canvas doesn't. So I tried to figure out how it decided what rubric score to associate with performance, and it does basically like a calculation of how many you got right for the auto graded. And the problem with that is that that doesn't align with what our codes mean. So I don't know if there's ways to work around that.
So so it's kind of like, it's, I don't know, redundant, but it's like you're taking the auto graded and manually associating that outcome, and I apologize.
So yes, faculty would just
Yes, you
look at it and then
Right.
click the rubric.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
exactly. So that's the work. I mean, it's
That's
not,
what we ask faculty to do.
yeah, it's not super clean, but
There are a lot of business processes involved with all of this.
Yeah.
And that, I was cruel to ask for a full day. But this is a big effort, no matter how you slice it. Once again, I've already stated this, but if you roll over your course, all of this conveys. So for those folks who are like, I don't want to have to do this again, are you going to grade your assignments? If it's built in, that's all you have to do. What's cool is by tomorrow, the dashboards should pick up what you graded today. So it's automatically loaded. So again, we get back to kind of where we are now. We have the dashboard working for us. Now, I know we're kind of hitting a timeline where I'm suspecting stomachs are starting to growl already. Am I wrong? Think about what learning outcomes you already have in Canvas. Build on those. As a college, as if you start wanting to enhance and use this methodology, thinking about what levels you want to assess. How are you going to get folks to do it? Those are social systems you got to get in place. Think about who needs to be engaged in the Canvas portion of implementation. Probably your CTL. Who in particular? We have split duties in ours. Think about what is a reasonable timeline. Jake, can you get it all done tomorrow? Depends on how many are. If anybody can, you can. But be realistic with the timeline that you put on people. And the same with IR. Then think about what training and other resources you might need to get this happen. Because maybe this is not in your wheelhouse. Maybe you don't have folks doing some of these things at your campus. Think about how else we need to kind of get you set up for support. That was a crazy amount of content in. I'm sorry. I know you want to make the Batman stop. I can't. I think about this stuff when I dream. But what I do want to give you all is just a couple of minutes of any debrief of anything Canvas at this point. Anything y'all want to share, and that includes online.
There is a question online. Does a learning outcome have to tie to an assignment?
It needs to align to an assignment or a quiz, something that gets graded. It's got to be associated with a rubric.
The only caveat I would say is faculty have to create an assignment to associate this with. It doesn't mean students need, like, it could be a dummy assignment that a student turns something in on paper and the faculty uses it to score. Like, students don't have to actually upload anything, but.
Oh, I'm so glad you said it. This is a 3.0 down the road. Dual enrollment, we don't have data. We don't have data and we need to have data. is the same learning outcome being achieved here versus at Millennial High School? Theoretically, if we can get those high school instructors to somewhere do an assignment with a learning outcome, put it in a Google Sheet, hard copy, whatever methodology to capture the data, it should be in the realm of possibility of having departments support somebody to do that manually keying to get it into Canvas. Theoretically, you can get it as long as we can get the data, we can get it into the system.
The other thing we've talked about at GCC is even if they don't use the Canvas course for anything in dual, the faculty still has access to it, and the faculty could still, like, if that assignment was set up through the CTL and pushed out into their Canvas course, the faculty could theoretically go in and click buttons.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's more work for our dual faculty.
And that's a whole other kettle of fish about adding another task to somebody who's outside. That's more of those social systems, and, dare we ask more from folks who are doing so much. So there are a lot of ripple effects to this whole system, and this is an evolution. This is not a, 5-minute clip kind of thing. However, it won't take you 7 years if you choose to go with it, because we've shortened that great. Great question online. Any other questions, folks, or thoughts?
There is another question online. Have you created an instruction manual for the Canvas end user, or will this slide presentation be shared?
I will be glad to share the slide presentation. This is about 10% of my job. And so my dedication to this has been a lot of personal hours. There may be some merit to having a more formal structure with this kind of function. I can't go above and beyond much more right now.
I mean, we talked about it, just because, like Jim always says, in case he wins the lottery, and hopefully he'll buy me out too, we can both be out here, right? So we can pass on something, but we've definitely talked about putting something together. It's just like Jim said, it's just a matter of just setting up the time, because this piece of it is so big, but yet it's, we all obviously all have many other duties as assigned, so.
What I like, nerds have always used the term GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. The danger with stuff like this, it's a little variation. Garbage in, gospel out. You put in bad data, people are just going to see it's on a dashboard and it's on the internet. It's got to be real. Doesn't work that way. Got to do things right the first time. That is why I included such an important element of getting it right in Canvas, be able to support the faculty so that they can quickly glance and see mastery is not mastery. Easy, quick glance, powerful information. Great question. Other questions, folks? My question for y'all is, what are you going to do for lunch? Let's take a breather. See you back at noon. Thank you very much. And the next couple of hours, maybe you're a cup of tea, they may not be. This is particularly focused for IR kinds of people and whoever does coding in Tableau. Everyone, I would love to have you here, because sometimes it's good to understand why we do the things we do.